either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad. 'Twas the week before Christmas, and we've got even more movies to talk about because we're going to talk about the movies that are coming out this week, and then we're going to jump ahead to the Christmas Day movies. And boy, there's some big ones. So welcome to it. This is the Screening Room Podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from maddwolf.com. That's MADDWOLF. Technical difficulties last week. I know we said we were going to try to move to video on YouTube, and we did try. And basically,
Failed.
Well, we succeeded, but then decided it's just too much work.
Yes.
We could do it, but we have jobs, unfortunately. And so anyway, we're going to keep it to this mainly audio version of the Screening Room, but it is on YouTube just as an audio, right? So we do have a page now that has the Screening Room on there. So check it out. And by the way, we'll still have short-form videos on there, but the long-form video, yeah, that was going to take me forever. So anyway, we're back with the movies for this week and for Christmas, the Screening Room Podcast, and we'll start with Mufasa, a cub lost and alone, meeting a sympathetic lion named Taka, the heir to a royal bloodline. The chance meeting sets in motion an expansive journey of a group of misfits searching for their destiny in Mufasa, the Lion King.
Outsiders, this is not a drill.
There will be one Lion King.
We have to carry on. We owe that to each other.
We're trapped. What do we do? Get ready to run! I never signed up for this.
We have come to rule without mercy.
This was a bad idea!
I will not bend to evil. We must fight together.
We are nearing destiny, Mufasa. And so, the earth must shake.
This is obviously a prequel to The Lion King, and Barry Jenkins right at the top as director, so that got our attention right away.
It did, and a little bit of worry because it does seem to me that, and I think Star Wars kind of started the trend of plucking up-and-coming, really, really talented indie filmmakers and putting them at the helm of these massive, giant-budget films. And it doesn't always work out very well. And the longer it's gone on, the more it happens with Disney films, Marvel, the Sony superhero movies. The filmmaker doesn't seem to have any positive impact on the outcome of the film, and the film doesn't seem to reflect the filmmaker in any way. And that's certainly the case with Barry Jenkins in this movie. I mean, it's one of those live action, quote, although there's no humans in it, so it's all still animated. It's just animated differently.
Yeah.
Lions getting along, and very much like the Lion King live action remake. In fact, it's the same scriptwriter, but it's a new story, and it tells Mufasa's origin story, and it looks nice the way the last one did, the way the Jon Favreau Lion King looked. And you've got a couple of those characters returning. Pumbaa, Timon, and Rafiki are back. But the rest of the group is kind of not there because the young cub, Simba's young cub, is being babysat, actually. And Rafiki is telling her the story of Mufasa, of her grandfather that she never knew, who gets swept away from his parents and his tribe by a big flood. And he's saved by another young cub. And then he and this other young cub, Taka, they get chased away from their pride by this big group of extra large, extra white lions called the Outsiders. And the villain is voiced by Mads Mikkelsen.
Nice.
Right there, I was like, right away, I'm like, wait a minute, I know that evil, seductive voice.
Yeah, we should say that the voice cast is just star-studded. Right at the top, Aaron Pierre does Mufasa, and he just had a breakthrough earlier this year with Rebel Ridge, which is great.
Yeah.
And then you've got Kelvin Harrison Jr.
Love him all the time.
Yeah, and of course Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner are back as Timon and Pumbaa, and you mentioned Mads. Also Keith David, speaking of great voices, Donald Glover, Beyonce and her daughter, Blue Ivy Carter.
Yeah, so Blue
voices,
she has a bigger role because she's the cub that's being babysat.
Right.
Beyonce has maybe a line or two because Nala is not in this very much.
But it's star-studded voice cast, and a star at the top as director. Barry Jenkins, of course, won an Oscar for Moonlight.
Yeah.
But it just, as you said in your written review, it's nice.
Yeah.
It looks great. The kids will probably dig it for the holidays, but then when you walk out of the theater, you'll probably forget it.
Yeah, it's very, very safe. They don't take any chances with anything. And, and risk is kind of what art is about. And this is just not meant to rock the boat. But it also means it's not really meant to be remembered at all. It doesn't have, Lin-Manuel Miranda does the songs.
Yeah.
And so they're fun. They're not nearly as good as they were in the first film, although they do, I think, mirror the same sense of danger in certain circumstances, sense of mischief in other circumstances. But I don't think that they are as quotable, as re-singable, certainly, as the ones from the original, and there are a couple of funny bits. It's the story of Mufasa is interrupted periodically as we are reminded that it is Rafiki telling the story, and mostly being interrupted by Timon and Pumbaa, who are wondering why they're not figuring more heavily in the story. And they do have some funny moments, but on the whole, the film really kind of is lacking in comedy and in humor. And honestly, those moments where they break up the origin story to go back to the cave where Rafiki's telling the story, they don't feel like they belong here. They feel more like calculated bathroom breaks for when this becomes a streamer.
Yeah, and it's easy to make that leap now in the age of streaming, that things are engineered that way, and it almost seems like Barry Jenkins made this as good as it is. It just was constrained by convention, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that there are some times, especially in the first half of the movie, where it seems like maybe there will be a refreshing idea here. And things start to look in certain spaces a little less traditional, a little less like the sort of big conglomerate Disney movie, but eventually tradition just weighs out and wins in the end. And it just becomes not such a much. Like, oh, okay, well,
fine.
It's fine.
Fine. And that's unfortunately all that can muster for Mufasa, the Lion King, in theaters now. Next up is another family film, at least partially animated. Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails reunite against a powerful new adversary, Shadow, a mysterious villain with powers unlike anything they have faced before. With their abilities outmatched, Team Sonic must seek out an unlikely alliance. With who, I wonder? Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Tom, Maddie, we need your help on a super dangerous top secret mission.
We're in.
Are you ready?
We were born ready.
All right, boys, try and keep up.
Come on, Granddaddy-O. We've got
Dirt to do.
with Shadow's power.
We can rule humanity.
When we're done, there won't be anything left to rule.
That is dark. Somebody better call Google Maps.
Life's all about the choices we make. Remember to listen to your heart. You're gonna make the right choice when it matters the most.
One hedgehog to another. Who does your highlights?
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
This ends now.
Our destiny awaits. You were right about one thing. This ends now.
So it's the third in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, and I think they get better each time, which is not as high praise as it might sound. But this one is really, it is entertaining. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Sonic and his two buddies get called to help the government when another superpowered hedgehog starts wreaking havoc, and it is this Shadow, who is voiced by Keanu Reeves, and that's very much fun.
Yeah.
And he has broken out of this hypersleep that they've had him in for 50 years, and now he's gonna seek revenge. And so the Team Sonic, they realize that the only thing that they can do is to team up with Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. And what they find out later, which I'm telling you because it's in the trailer, is that Shadow's partnered up with Dr. Robotnik's grandfather, the professor.
Also played by Jim Carrey.
Yes, also played by Jim Carrey. And they're fun, of course. Carrey is very much fun in this, a very larger-than-life sort of comedic role. And he's fun twice. He's fun as both of them.
And much of the cast is back from the first films, including the director, Jeff Fowler, who has been at the helm since the original film. You've got James Marsden and Tika Sumpter are back, and of course, as the voice of Sonic, Ben Schwartz is back as well. But yeah, and Idris Elba, who joined up last time as Knuckles, is joined by, as you mentioned, Keanu Reeves. So that's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, and the thing, Idris Elba plays that character who doesn't understand sarcasm and is, very honest and literal, and it's often quite funny actually in this movie. I mean, it was the highlight of the last film, but it's often quite funny in this movie. And there are some really funny bits. There's a small but very funny bit with James Marsden and a puppet that I enjoy. And the thing is, it's not a movie that's aimed at adults.
Right.
So, don't be snarky. I tried not to be. It is my nature to be like, this is boring.
Although for a certain age group of adults, it does hit the nostalgic, not us.
No, but 90s kids, who played this all the time. And it doesn't, it caters to that. If you played the game a lot, there are more inside jokes for you than other people.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was really funny when somebody mistook one of them for Pikachu. That was a whole funny bit as well, since that's more in our wheelhouse. But anyway, it's better than the first two.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I didn't hate the first two. I didn't. But each one is better, and this one I thought was a lot of fun.
And that's if you can say that in a franchise they keep getting better, that's definitely a good thing, because it's so often the reverse is true. But yeah, they keep getting better here. And the best in the franchise so far, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's out in theaters now.
And if you want to read, Rachel Willis did the review for us at madwolf.com, and she brought her expert co-viewer Aiden along.
And he loved it.
And he's the cutest film critic of all time.
So you can check that review out at madwolf.com for Sonic 3. Next up, how about a non-animated period drama? 855 women joined the war to fix the 3-year backlog of undelivered mail. Faced with discrimination and a country devastated by war, they managed to sort more than 17 million pieces of mail ahead of time. This is the 6888.
When there is no mail, there is low morale. 6888 Battalion! Forward march! They did not send us because they thought we could do it. We are here because they are sure we cannot. We are no strangers to making a shack a home. We are at war, and when you are at war, you make do. Unlike some other folks here, we have the most to prove. Now is where you show the proof. This is our mission. And we will not fail.
In a way, though, it's in keeping, because it does seem like something that a family could watch together over the holidays at home and certainly learn something.
Yeah, for sure. This is a Netflix movie. It is out in some select theaters, but this is one that definitely feels engineered for streaming as well. And that synopsis is a little misleading, because it says the women joined the war to fix the 3-year backlog. They really didn't. They didn't know they were going to have that mission, but they got it. It's the 6888 Battalion. It was the only all-black, all-female battalion to actually see overseas duty in World War II. And in this retelling, it is run by Kerry Washington, playing Major Charity Adams, a real-life person, who whips these young recruits into shape and then is wanting an assignment.
Yeah. And
is just not getting it because of some serious racism. Not only racism, but misogyny as well. Yeah, they're not up to snuff. Not only are you women, but you're black, and you're not good enough. And that's made clear to them, especially by General Halt, played by Dean Norris, one of the all-time that guys.
Yeah.
But when President and Mrs. Roosevelt get wind of the fact that families are not getting mail and the soldiers cannot get mail from home, and that is hurting morale. And then they also bring, we've got 3 cameos here in this scene where they are, when they tell General Halt to take care of this. It's Sam Waterston as President Roosevelt, Susan Sarandon as Eleanor Roosevelt, and then you've got Oprah Winfrey, who she's got a cameo as Mary McLeod Bethune, the founder of the National Council for Negro Women. So they all have a meeting, and then the general is tasked with finding a way to sort through this backlog of mail, and that's when the 6888 gets assigned. But at the same time, they sort of want to sabotage the mission so then they can say, look, you are not up to be given any job at all.
Right.
And you're right, it's an incredible history lesson. I had no idea.
No.
This is based on a magazine article, and the director and writer is Tyler Perry. And so while you definitely get the feeling, I mean, the intentions are nothing but good. I mean, these women did an incredible job. They were given 6 months to do it.
$17 million.
$17 million, and they did it in, I think, less than half that time.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
It is insane.
It's just crazy what they did. And then later, throughout the decades, and just here in the last several years, have gotten their due after all these years. But it's just so overdone, as Tyler Perry often does. The dialogue is so expositionary, just telling, explaining, and even solid actors like Kerry Washington, like Dean Norris, they're seemingly being coached to go overboard.
Right.
The facial expressions, the reaction shots, everything is just overboard. The other support characters of women in the battalion are just so broadly brushed. Everything is just not, it's too superficial.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes you want to learn more about this, and it certainly lets you know what an incredible job these ladies did, and on the kind of racism and misogyny that they faced, and that is certainly believable. But that's one of the only things that is. The set pieces look sanitized, cleaned up. Everything just seems just too surface level. And then at the end, when a story like this, you pretty much know you're going to get, at the end, you're going to get some real footage of the real people. That's great.
Yeah.
You want to see them.
Yes.
Okay, and hear what happened. But not only do you get that, which is fine, but all the plot points we pretty much just saw unfold, they retell it all. And it just seems, and again, this seems engineered for streaming.
Like
yeah,
people who aren't really paying attention.
It really does. Exactly. Just hammer it home. And unfortunately, I do understand that because that is the way so many people watch. But it is getting at least a limited release in theaters, which we always love. And then it looks or feels especially out of place. But it's a good story. The hearts are in the right place. That you deserve to know about these people.
Yes.
And give them their heroic due. It's just too overdone and not nuanced enough for the story. And that's too bad. But it's the 6888, and it is it's on Netflix and also in select theaters now. And one more out now before we jump into the Christmas releases. It's a documentary. Amidst the lush eastern Himalayan forests, moths convey a mysterious message in Nocturnes.
हम शायद वो सब ना झेल पाएं जो मौत ने झेला है.
This is one that Matt Weiner reviewed for us at Mad Wolf. Loved it.
Loved it.
And it's one of those nature documentaries that is so effective because it's not force-feeding you information, but the sound and the look of it are just hypnotic. They're mesmerizing with all of these moths, and the score really works to emphasize that, and it really works on you. And what you just come away with is the understanding that we individually have incredible damaging repercussions on every other species on this planet. And it's just one of those sort of magical films that helps you recognize that without without trying too hard, without beating you about the head and neck with it.
Yeah, which is always welcome.
Because you can just see like all of this is in jeopardy, all of this. But at the same time, it's just such a gorgeous, hypnotic film.
And you can check out Matt Weiner's full review. He loved it at madwolf.com. It's in theaters now, called Nocturnes. All right, let's go to Christmas Day.
Yeah.
4 big ones on Christmas Day. A little bit of something for everybody, well, except little kids. I don't think any of these Christmas Day.
Well, they can still see the ones that came out. That's right. That's right.
Have Sonic and Mufasa. But let's start with one not for kids. A gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Oh, how we've been waiting for Nosferatu.
There is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
But you could never please me as he could. I'm ready.
In fact, one of us is wearing a dress with Nosferatu on it right now.
Yes, and it's me. Yeah, we've been really waiting for this one for so many reasons. We love the original Nosferatu from 1922.
Love it.
From Renault. And then the sort of remake, the reimagining from 79.
Yeah.
That is done by Werner Herzog called Nosferatu the Vampire.
Yep.
And then after that, you had the Shadow of a Vampire movie.
In 2000.
Yeah, starring Willem Dafoe.
Right.
That looked at the production of the original Nosferatu movie as if the actor, Max Schreck, who played Count Orlok, was actually a vampire.
Yeah, that movie is such a treasure, and Defoe was nominated for an Oscar for that.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I mean, it's a horror comedy. It's really smart. It's such a great movie.
Yeah, it's really
I highly recommend all 3 of those films.
All 3 of them.
Watch them all.
And we were excited about this because the co-writer and director is Robert Eggers. Love all his stuff.
Everything.
The Witch.
Yes.
The Lighthouse.
Yes.
The Northman.
Yep.
So all of that brought us to Nosferatu, and we were not disappointed. Love this so much. And first of all, I guess credit has to go to SpongeBob. Because as SpongeBob fans know, he brought up Nosferatu in the show, and Robert Eggers has come out and said, yes, that's part of bringing Nosferatu back into the popular culture. Yeah, so tip of the hat.
That's right. I've seen those episodes, and they're really funny.
They are, yeah.
They're really funny. And, the style of the original vampire in Nosferatu is sort of like a naked mole rat, right? I mean, it looks a little bit like the Salem's Lot vampire. He was patterned, from the movie What We Do in the Shadows, Peter was patterned after the Nosferatu style vampire. Who was very different than your traditional Dracula, right? He was not the sort of seductive, rich aristocrat at all that you see in any of the Dracula movies, even though it was a spin on the tale of Dracula. And so I was curious, I was interested to see how Eggers handled the vampire, who is played by Bill Skarsgård, right? Pennywise from the It movies, among other things. And as you've said a couple times, they make you wait 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Before you get an eyeball of him.
When he first came on the screen, I looked at the timestamp, and it takes 45 minutes before you see him fully. And let me tell you, there's a reason you're not seeing him in the trailer.
Yes.
Because it's worth waiting for. Now, you hear him, and he certainly has a very distinctive voice as well. But if you've seen any of the other Nosferatus, he's different.
Yeah, and we're not gonna give anything away except to say that it is a unique envisioning of the vampire. It doesn't look like any of the vampires. We've seen all the vampires, believe you me, and he doesn't look like any of them. And it's a fascinating and very fitting with the type of story that Eggers is telling, because one of the other things, so your 2 main characters are played by Lily Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult. And they are essentially the Harker and Mina characters from Dracula. Here they are Ellen and Thomas Hutter. And in all of the other retellings, whether it's Dracula or whether it's Nosferatu, these 2 characters, who are really the main characters, they're sort of ignored. They're sort of just boring and bland, old, regular, everyday people. And most filmmakers are more interested in the more sort of flashy characters of Van Helsing and Dracula and Renfield, who all get a lot of fun treatment in this. But what I really appreciate about this version of Nosferatu is that the 2 main characters have real backstories. They have real gravity in this film, and they're fascinating. And I love the sort of larger backstory that Ellen has, that the Lily Rose Depp character has. I love everything about that's completely unique to this film. And I love Nicholas Holt's performance. I think he is so good in playing a character that I think, except maybe in Werner Herzog's version, they usually are just very throwaway and forgettable.
Yeah, and this seems like sort of a melding of the two, the original and then Werner Herzog's version, because it adds about, with the original Nosferatu, it was about an hour and 30 minutes or
not
hour
quite,
and, anyway. Yeah, not quite. This one is about 2:15. So it punches up the story with, you talked about more backstory with the Hutters. It doesn't feel padded at all because you're interested in how this comes to be as Thomas is tasked from his job with going over to pay a visit to Count Orlok, Nosferatu, basically, because he wants to buy a property, and and Thomas is worried for his job. He has to do this. He doesn't want to leave his wife, but he has to. And then there's this mystical connection across the sea between Ellen and Count Orlok, and then she seems possessed, and then they have to turn to who else but Willem Dafoe, who's a local doctor who knows about the supernatural. That he starts trying to tell these people, no, it's not a medical condition. She's possessed.
Yeah. So it's in all of those beats, it's Dracula, but that seems fair, right? Because the very original F.W. Murnau's version, it is Dracula, and he just changes it enough to he thought avoid copyright infringement. He was wrong, by the way. But what I think is interesting in what he really Eggers, it's an amalgamation of there's a lot of Werner Herzog's version, because Werner Herzog's version is so weird and it's so preoccupied with the plague. And I love the way this brings it in. All of the proper Dracula versions, it's romantic. There's a romance.
Yes.
And, especially sort of the Coppola version, it's that, romance across time that brings them together. There's something beautiful and passionate about that. Eggers takes that idea and makes it quite unseemly and horrifying in this one.
Yeah.
And then the performance in Herzog's is so weird, but everything is better fleshed out, I think, in this.
Oh, yeah.
Than certainly in any of the Nosferatu versions, but in most of the Dracula versions as well. I mean, it's not Dracula. This, it's got those major story beats, like you said, but it isn't Dracula. It's set in Austria. It's very Austrian. And it's so gorgeous what this looks like. The cinematography is stunning.
We haven't even mentioned it's black and white, as Eggers likes to do. And it is stunning. Yeah. I mean, made for the big screen. Don't wait for streaming.
In fact, you can see it in IMAX.
Yes, and worth it. I mean, worth it on the big screen and in IMAX. The cast also includes Aaron Taylor-Johnson. This is much better than Kraven the Hunter.
It is, sure is.
And as the Renfield character here, his name is Knock, and he's played by classic that guy Simon McBurney, who you'll recognize his face.
Yes, and it's a very interesting twist on that character, and he gets to be a little meteor, I think, in this one.
Yeah, I think the whole story does.
Yeah,
the whole
I agree.
story, because it sort of combines the two of Murnau and Herzog, just feels more fully. It reminded me in some ways, even though people will disagree with me on this and often do, about the new Suspiria, the latest Suspiria remake.
Yes.
The story had more meat to it.
Yeah.
And this one really does. And it's one of our favorites of the year.
Yes.
It's a love it when we're looking forward to something and it delivers on those expectations.
Yes.
As at least for us, Robert Eggers always does. And this is just a great reimagining of a classic story, and by all means, if this is your bag, and I think you know already if it is or not, I'd have a hard time believing that you won't be satisfied with this version of Nosferatu, made for the big screen, for IMAX. Take it all in, starting Christmas Day in theaters. Next up is another one been looking forward to. This is set in 1961. An unknown 19-year-old Bob Dylan arrives in New York City with his guitar. He forges relationships with music icons of Greenwich Village on his meteoric rise, culminating in a groundbreaking performance that reverberates worldwide. It's a complete unknown.
I hear Bob is playing electric.
Not on our stage, he isn't.
They just want me singing Blowing in the Wind for the rest of my goddamn life.
Well, this is gonna piss some people off.
You came here with nothing but a guitar. You never talk about your family, your past.
People make up their past, Sylvie. They remember what they want. They forget the rest.
I want to know which side he's on.
I'm not sure they want to hear what I want to play, Johnny.
I want to hear it.
Turn it down! Play it loud.
Make some noise, BD.
So this is James Mangold, who made Walk the Line, a great movie that did suffer a little bit from being so traditionally told, from birth to death.
Yeah.
And it just seemed very formulaic, and he made a good choice with the Bob Dylan story.
Yeah, that Walk the Line's a good movie. This is better. This is another one where really our expectations were rewarded, because I was really worried about it. I mean, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan.
Yes, you are.
For many, 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 many years. Yeah. And he's such an enigmatic character and he's been treated on film, a few times. And the ones that have done it best give him that treatment. Well, you're not going to hope to know this person.
Right.
So there was a movie, Todd Haynes years ago did one called I'm Not There, where all these different, very famous actors portrayed Dylan throughout time, throughout circumstance.
Sort of the different periods of his life and the different sort of kinds of human.
That seemed to work. Yeah. So I was really kind of worried about a more conventional telling. But James Mangold and the writers, he's a co-writer along with Jay Cox, who's been a long time, not only music writer, but a writer for films as well, and Elijah Wald. They're smart, number one, to boil it down to really just a 4-year period.
Yes.
That's the best thing right there, because you're not going to try to tell his whole story.
No.
It's about this snapshot in time that really still reverberates for music fans, and it starts when Dylan famously shows up to pay respects to an ailing Woody Guthrie, played by Scoot McNairy, in his hospital room, and also meets Pete Seeger, played by Edward Norton, who's great in this movie as well. And Timothée Chalamet plays Bob Dylan, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, he is.
If he's not nominated, something's wrong. And then it picks up there. Because then Bob Dylan, right away, he gets their attention, especially, Woody Guthrie is pretty much bedridden, but Pete Seeger sort of takes him under his wing into the folk circuit there in Greenwich Village in New York, and he starts rising, and he makes that first album, I think only one of his originals was on there, but then when he starts writing these iconic songs and he becomes a hero of the folk movement and keeps playing the Newport Folk Festival and comes in with Joan Baez and the whole group. And then it leads up to that big watershed moment in 1965 where he decided to go electric on the stage of the Newport Folk Festival, which is something you did not do. And they did not want him to do at all, which only fueled his fire. So that's what this movie is about. And it does a good job in getting us inside that moment. The entire cast is great. We mentioned Edward Norton. We mentioned Timothée Chalamet. Also, Elle Fanning plays the longtime early girlfriend of Bob Dylan, who Dylan fans will know is based on Susie Rotolo, but apparently he wanted her name changed. Okay, so here she's Sylvie Russo, but Elle Fanning, and then Monica Barbaro, who you might remember from Top Gun Maverick. She plays Joan Baez, and she's also very, very good. And both of them, Chalamet and Barbaro, do their own singing and their own guitar playing. And Timothée Chalamet does a fantastic job of both. He really does. Of course, Bob Dylan has a very distinctive singing voice, and he gets it pretty good. And I was really watching his fingers and playing guitar. He got good. He got good to do this, and it is believable. Just like Joaquin Phoenix did his singing in Walk the Line, and also, Johnny Cash, a very distinctive singing voice. And Joaquin Phoenix got close enough. Timothée Chalamet is great. Now, Barbaro doesn't have as high a voice as Joan Baez, so it's not as close, but she's still very, very good. And I think the choice to have them do their own singing works here. And they're good together. I mean, it tells a great story that even if you're not a Dylan fan, and I saw this in a screening with several people that I knew who really they've heard the name Bob Dylan, but not fans, and they came out of there going, I want to know more about this guy. So it works on that way too. So even if you're not a Bob Dylan fan or don't know much about him, or only hear him now, see him now in his 80s, this was a watershed moment in music. It really, really was, when he went electric and changed the course of popular music at the time. And this is a great retelling of that moment in time. And it's about as good, I think, if you're going to treat Bob Dylan to a quote-unquote conventional type of biography, this is about as good as you can get, I think, because you're not going to try to encapsulate the entire life. Like you said, he was born, then he lived in Minnesota, then he moved. No, let's narrow it down to this, such an important moment. And now, longtime Dylan fans are going to see a couple things. One very big thing that is an anachronism, where they have happened at the Newport Folk Festival that did not. Dylan fans.
It happened, but it didn't happen there.
But apparently, and this can easy to understand, Bob Dylan said, "Who cares?" This movie makes clear, he's not much concerned about what the audience thinks or wants. And if you'd seen him,
about telling the truth,
right? And if you've seen him in concert, where he just comes out and doesn't say a word to you, as he's done many times that I've seen him, and plays songs in different keys with different words and different time signatures. He's not about that.
No.
He's sometimes about antagonizing the audience, and that started from the beginning. And this movie shows that too. So, but it also is not afraid to show him as someone, especially early on, that took from people what they were willing to give, and he just moved right on.
It does not make an angel out of him.
No, but it shows him to be someone just so concerned with the music, and that's it. And in that way, much more believable than something like, say, Bohemian Rhapsody, where they just walk in a studio and said, "We want to write something where the audience gets involved. Stomp, stomp, clap, boom. 2 seconds later, we have..." No. Here's a guy that's just walking around his every waking moment, just spitting out lyrics and writing them down, and just has songs bursting out of him 24/7. And when you look at the amount of songs he's written over his life, that seems very believable. Probably the type of guy he was, and why he just shut people out, especially these two women that the film focuses on, these two relationships, took when it was convenient to him to take them in, and then to move away when it wasn't.
And one of the things I like about that also, because I think after the wild success of Bohemian Rhapsody, we saw a lot of films about huge, musical stars that kind of paint them in much too forgiving a light. And I'm thinking of the Bob Marley movie from earlier this year, where, you watch a movie and you come home thinking, I should have more Bob Marley because those songs are great. But what you forget is that he was really a very gnarly human being. And what I love about this movie is that he's a very gnarly human being. They're not pretending that he's not, because that makes for more compelling storytelling than when you just sort of pretend somebody is what they weren't, because it makes them out to be more likable.
Yeah, and then it also gives you a glimpse of the fact that when you have such a meteoric rise like he did, and suddenly they pick you as the voice of a generation, that's got to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, and all the people want from you, constantly want. That's got to affect you too.
Well, especially when
you got to get your guard up.
Yeah, but when you look at him, right? I mean, he was an incredible poet for a generation, but he couldn't possibly represent a generation. He's not like anybody else.
Yeah. So you definitely get the sense that it was uncomfortable, and that's understandable. Anybody would be. All of a sudden, you're the voice of a generation. You have to do what we want and never do anything more except this folk music.
Yeah.
Well, he got his guard up. No,
of course.
You can't peg me down like that. And of course, he's followed that sort of thinking his entire career, and it's worked out pretty well. So it's fascinating, and I can definitely see where if you're not a fan or didn't know a lot about him, you'll want to look back. And remember, if you didn't know anything about this going electric thing, it was a big deal, a big deal, and this one represents it well. So another favorite of ours of the year in theaters, Christmas Day, A Complete Unknown. Next up in theaters on Christmas Day, another one very much not for kids. An erotic thriller, a high-powered CEO puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. It's Babygirl.
Being a CEO means being a nurturer and a collaborator.
Go ahead.
No. What?
Is that what you want?
I have these fantasies.
What do you mean?
It's about giving and taking power.
What did you do? Go to a library? Look that up?
This is what I'm talking
No,
about.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No.
Say it.
Okay.
I won't do.
I will do.
Whatever you tell me. Say it again.
I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Good girl.
I've never experienced anything like this.
You're my baby girl.
This is the latest from writer-director Helena Rain. Hope I pronounced that right. Who just a couple years ago did Bodies.
Much fun.
Much fun. This one's a little less fun.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting film, and it reminded me right from the get-go of Secretary from a couple of decades back.
Yep.
Which really,
without the humor.
Well, it's got some humor.
It's got
but
some
that
humor,
was,
but that one
was
has
a comedy.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, exactly.
And that, and this to me felt like a perfect inversion of that film, actually, because that film introduced the world to the amazing talent of Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just an absolute nobody who really kind of wanted to be spanked. That's the kind of relationship she was looking for. And she found it with this chilly CEO. And little by little, over the course of the film, she finds ways to control the situation so that she gets what she wants, which is to be controlled. It's a very subversive, fascinating movie. And the way that this inverts that is that you take an absolute veteran, a very established actor in Nicole Kidman, just, beyond reproach, and she's the chilly CEO who just wants somebody else to be in charge for a while. Like, that is her sexual fantasy, is just somebody else is in charge of everything, is in charge of anything. And I think that the movie does a really good job of helping you understand that, of being empathetic and open to that, because you and at the same time still sort of judging what it is that she's doing, because what she's doing is having sex with an intern. Although she's not exactly taking advantage of the intern.
No.
He starts it. He senses something in her, and it brings this out in him. And I think in that way, the film complicates the audience's preconceived notions about all of this, and then eventually is very transparent about that, because when she kind of gets, in the end of the film, when she's being blamed and people, this young man played by Harris Dickinson, who was in Iron Claw last year and was so great. He was like, no.
Triangle of Sadness as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been on the up and coming for a while now.
Yeah, and he just tells, no, you're just whitewashing sexuality. That's just really not. It's an old-fashioned standard of sexuality, which I also thought was very interesting. I don't think the movie is looking to cast stones, to be honest with you, but I also don't think it's entirely forgiving. I mean, and I loved that complicated idea of everything in it, that you feel like you hate both of these characters so much, and then the longer you live with them, you're like, maybe I don't, maybe, it's two incredible performances at the heart of this movie.
And then she has a husband and family at home. Antonio Banderas is her husband. She's got two children at home as well. And right from the get-go, right from the day that the interns are introduced, he says something just challenging to her that an intern would never, to say to a CEO is like challenging to her right away.
Yeah.
And that just gets her attention, like, what's with this guy? And so right away he's asserting the fact that he's got a little bit of control here. Can I actually control this CEO? Maybe she wants to be controlled, and he plays on that.
And the very next scene, she seeks him out. She's on the phone with somebody, and she just snaps at him and says, "Make me a cup of coffee." Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting back and forth and back and forth. I mean, it's a fascinating movie.
It is. It is fascinating.
And I think honestly, I think its most fascinating moments are the ones that are messiest. The ones that are just unexpected and emotionally messy, and they bring something sort of almost wholesome into situations where you don't expect it. And I think where it is weakest is when it is too tidy, not just in the scenes themselves, but in the structure of the film. I think that it eventually, it just feels like it feels like they're shoehorning a fascinating movie into the standard formula for erotic thriller. I don't think this is an erotic thriller.
Well, it certainly is sexually charged. Let's put it that way.
And it's shot like a thriller. I mean, you spend the whole time breathlessly waiting to find out who's going to walk in the door. And my God, I mean, so there, in a lot of ways, it's shot like a thriller. I just don't think in its heart that's really what it is.
Interesting, and it is. I think you're right. There is some humor here, just not the kind of humor that Secretary, because I certainly agree with your comparisons to Secretary with some of the subject matter, the power and the submissiveness, and not only in the sexual encounters, but just power dynamics.
Yeah.
And here it's in the corporate world.
Oh, yeah.
But this is not the same type of wink humor, I think. But there is some humor here. But it is fascinating. And it is fascinating. These two performances lead it, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And these characters that you're right. They're not likable, but then where's it going to go?
Yeah.
And, of course, how's it going to wrap up? So it is fascinating to watch it play out. And that is another Christmas Day release called Babygirl. And one more on Christmas Day, a sports biography, the story of Claressa T-Rex Shields, a boxer from Flint, Michigan, who trained to become the first woman in her country's history to win an Olympic gold medal in the sport. The fire inside.
It just ain't what I thought it would be. All these people getting these endorsements. Meanwhile, I can barely pay my mama rent.
Maybe it just take more time.
I would love to represent Claressa. It's just much harder with women athletes.
It's not fair, but people expect female athletes to behave a certain way.
I won that gold medal by being me. What happened to staying true to who you are?
It's way bigger than boxing, Russ. So it's gonna be up to you to show who Claressa Shields really is.
If I'm trained for the second gold medal, I'm gonna need exactly what the men get.
Is it the money? Is it the recognition?
Money is recognition. This ain't just about me. This is for all the women.
Folks around here know that if Claressa Shields can do it, they can too.
You've seen more in your 16 years than most people seen in their entire lifetime. I want you to take that fire inside of you and turn it into something good.
Well, here we have Barry Jenkins back again
That's
because
right.
he wrote
Yeah.
this screenplay.
And that's what his Oscar was for writing Moonlight.
That's
yeah,
right.
He's a hell of a writer.
Yeah, he is. And this is directed by Rachel Morrison. I believe this is her feature debut. She's done a lot of TV, but also been a cinematographer on great movies like Mudbound and
Black Panther.
Black Panther. So, yeah, good stuff here. But here's another one that's led by two great performances right at the top. As Claressa Shields, Ryan Destiny, who I was not aware of. She comes mainly from the TV series Grown-ish. Very good. And then we love Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah, one of our favorites. Great in everything.
Great in everything. And he plays Jason Crutchfield, who was Claressa's trainer in Flint, Michigan. And right away, you got the it's sort of like a cliche, and they don't spend much time on it, the fact that when she first walks into the gym, he says, no women, no women. They don't belabor that point. He gets his mind changed pretty quickly. And, of course, she is a natural, and Flint, Michigan is, to put it mildly, very hard scrabble. So she's got a tough way to go, but if you know anything about this real person, which I really didn't, as big of a sports fan as I am, that shows you how much women's sports have to scratch and claw to get noticed. She has a tremendous amount of success going up through the ranks and then to the Olympic trials and then to the Olympics. The sports biography, the sports movie can be as cliched as any.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you fall upon those story
yeah.
beats, and Barry Jenkins knows this clearly, and he really gets around it because, yes, you have the training, you're going to see that, and boxing movies have their own set of cliches, but it really focuses not so much on that as the trauma that she comes from in her life, and then even when she gets success in the ring, still the struggle as a woman and a woman of color to get what the other athletes in other sports, in other genders, in other races, what they get when they have success in their sports. So the struggle continues. And as she fought not only in the ring, but outside the ring for things like equal pay and equal recognition, equal opportunities for things like Wheaties boxes. She sees other people on the Wheaties boxes, and she has, and really continues to have, because now she's a professional fighter. And here's another one where you see her at the end, like a real footage. I wouldn't make her mad. I'll tell you that right now. But it's really, really well done, and it's well written. like we always say, it comes back to the writing.
Yes.
Always starts with what's on the page. And you, as you pointed out, Barry Jenkins, an Oscar-winning writer, and then fleshed out by these two central performances and the supporting ensemble good as well. And it's just the main thing, it's believable.
Mm-hmm.
It's authentic, even though it's set in the sports world and in a sport that maybe, boy, have there been more boxing movies than any other? I mean, there are a ton of boxing movies. But there's great stories in boxing too.
Yeah.
And this is one.
But also it's one-on-one, and there's no helmet, so you can see their faces. I mean, it's a more cinematic sport than most.
Yeah, and it's stays inside that sports biography mindset while getting around the most cliched bits of it.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly see some boxing training and some boxing action.
Montages.
Not as much. That's a good point. There was never, when we see movies like this, there's always that moment, because of that song from South Park, where we always go, we're going to need a month. I never did that here. There's never one that made me just click, there it is. So that just shows you. I'm glad you brought that up. I really didn't think about that till just now. I never had that. There's going to be a montage moment. So it really feels authentic, it feels real, and it's led by two great performances. And this is another winner for Christmas Day. Maybe not getting the widespread notoriety. I haven't seen a lot of ads for this yet.
No, but it's going to be in all the theaters. I mean,
it's going to be it deserves to be.
Yeah.
So definitely worth checking out if you're going. This is one that's could be satisfying as well if you like these types of movies. And another one where you'll learn something too. I certainly did, about an athlete that I was not that familiar with, and it's a good one called The Fire Inside, in theaters on Christmas Day. All right, covered a lot of ground, not only this week, but looking ahead to Christmas Day. So that only leaves next week and the best films of 2024. I'm ashamed to say we still have a couple to see before we make that final list, but we're going to get it. We're going to narrow it down, and we're going to talk about the best next week.
Yeah. Yeah, we do still have some narrowing to do. I think
some of them don't come out wide until after the first of the year.
That'll be one of the, because you'd be surprised at the strategies that we have to use to go from like 45 movies down to 10.
Because one of them we still haven't seen. You may have heard of. It's a movie called The Brutalist. It's 3.5 hours long.
We'll watch it this weekend.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah,
we have to.
So we want to.
Well, no, yeah,
we
definitely,
do.
because it's getting fantastic reviews right now, and we'll probably get some nominations, if not plenty of them. Anyway, long way of saying we will get our list together and have it next week for the best of 2024. But I certainly think at least one or two maybe of the ones we talked about this week to be on that list.
Well,
so
yes.
What do you think? Let us know. You got Christmas Day plans? You want to check something out, or maybe stuff you've seen already?
Do you want to borrow my Nosferatu dress to go see the movie?
Yeah, let us know. You can easily find us on any of the socials. We're at Mad Wolf Columbus. Also now on YouTube.
That's right.
So check that out. I'm sorry it's not a long-form video. I just don't have enough time for all that editing. But plenty of short-form videos will be on there as well. So
plus the podcast.
Yeah, so plenty of ways to keep in touch. Please do. Have a great Christmas and holiday season. As we tape this today, happy birthday to Hope.
Thank
it's her birthday
you.
today. And then enjoy the movies, and we'll talk again soon. Keep in touch. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
Happy holidays.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.